It is 8:47 Eastern, so the chair will call us to order at that time. We usually give it a few moments. Oh, here's Mr. Rogers is coming in, Madam Secretary.
All right.
There might be a few more stragglers.
Mhm.
Let me share my screen. Need to zoom around a little bit in order to do this. One sec. Yeah, Mike Rufo. We're going to give it another minute because I see a few more people straggling in.
Madam Chair, while we're waiting, I've had
Yes.
multiple requests, people asking when the next town hall might be.
Oh, that's going to be one of the
Ideas on
first.
that?
That's one of the first things we're going to discuss
Perfect, thank you.
under housekeeping. So I'm just trying to share my screen and get all these windows out of the way. When I hit this, please let me know if you believe from what I can see on my end that all of you should be seeing the agenda. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we did call to order. If the secretary could take attendance and we'll move on to some housekeeping announcements.
All right. Arrowwood present. Bracco. Paul Bracco.
Sorry, I was just finding the unmute button. Present.
No problem. Szalski. Nick Szalski. I'll come back. Harlos.
Present.
Latham.
Here.
Martin.
Present.
Molman.
I'm here.
All right. Rowlett.
Here.
Rufo.
Here.
Thank you. Mike Seebeck.
This is a recording.
Thank you. Nicholas Szalski. Nicholas Szalski, Madam Chair. At present, Nicholas Szalski is not here. I'm going to call the alternates. Number 1, Chuck Moulton.
Here.
All right. 2, Rich Tomaso. Tomaso. 3, Dave Roberson. Dave Roberson.
He's here trying to speak.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Greg Deal. Roger Roots. Roots. All right. Data
Nick-
Logan.
And this Nick Szalski is entering the room, Madam Secretary.
All right, thank you. We have a full complement then on the members, Madam Chair. Data Logan. All right. Dean Rogers.
Present.
All right, I'm going to call the alternates again. Rich Tomaso, number 2. Okay. Number 4, Greg Deal. Greg Deal. 5, Roger Roots. Roger Roots. 6, Data Logan. 6, Data Logan. Madam Chair, we have 1, Chuck Moulton, 3, David Roberson, and 7, Dean Rogers, alternates present.
Okay, before we get to public comment, there's a little bit of housekeeping I want to do, since some of that then might want to be addressed in public comment. So the next town hall is set for September 21st, 2023. So if anyone had questions on that, that's when it's set. To me, it's in stone, but I am going to put a little asterisk next to it to put a tentatively, only because some of that depends upon headquarters staff schedule in how they can send out emails. I don't want to do a town hall that isn't widely advertised. So if I run into some kind of, no, we need to send out this fundraising email, because getting in non-fundraising emails, there's very limited spots for those nationally. So I will certainly give the chair a heads up that we have this coming and we'd like several emails to be sent. But if for some reason it's not advertised properly, we might move it back more, because there's no point in having a town hall if the members aren't well informed of it. The second housekeeping matter I did bring up on the list. If you scroll down to the bottom of the agenda, which we don't need to do right now, this is a carryover from the times I chaired the platform committee, but we usually leave the room open for public comment for about 15 minutes later. This is sort of turned into now almost an LP happy hour, and the burden in keeping the party room open for that long has just become too great, at least on my end. I do encourage members who maybe want to hang out for a few hours later to set something up in their private Zoom account, and feel free to put a link into chat. But this room is only going to stay open for about 15 minutes to give members additional time to comment, depending upon what they may hear from this meeting. If bylaws committee members think we need additional working sessions, because sometimes that's what's happened, we can set those up officially. But it has gotten a little out of hand. And some of the members that are on the East Coast are feeling left out of these working sessions, these impromptu working sessions that have happened after the meeting. Because remember, it already ends at 10:45 for them. So we want to be fair to everyone's time and respect the fact that we are meeting every other week. So I just want, and Data Logan is entering the room, Madam Secretary. So I just wanted to get those 2 points of housekeeping. But again, anyone wishes to have some kind of happy hour / hangout afterwards, please feel free to set one up in your personal Zoom account and shoot a link in the chat, and everyone can do that. So now the floor is open for public comment. Just to explain to people who aren't always here and to remind everyone, public comment is open to both party members, members of the public, and committee members if they have comments that they don't think is necessarily going to fit anywhere else on the agenda. So I see that Mr. Sazelski has his hand raised, so the chair calls upon Mr. Sazelski.
I just wanted to make sure that I was counted. I came in a couple minutes late. That's all.
Yes, I saw you and I alerted the secretary. If anyone else would like to participate in public comment, if you go to reactions, there's a raise hand function. If for some reason, though, you can't find it, just unmute and say you'd like to speak. If that's a problem, I'm going to give it a few moments for people to try to find the raise hand if they wish to engage in public comment. Otherwise, we'll move on to business. Okay, I don't see any further public comment. So the first item in the agenda is to approve the minutes from our previous meeting, which was August 10th. The secretary did distribute them to the bylaws committee list, and there's a link to the draft also in the agenda, which you have a link to. So are there any corrections to the August 10th minutes?
Maybe I'm just, Madam Chair, looking through them now. I'm only at about page 4 through 10. And so I may just end up abstaining if we have a vote. I'm just noticing typos, and I know typos can just be corrected without committee action. But I just want to let you know where I was at on reviewing those.
Okay. Anyone further? So I'm going to ask, first, let me give a bit of an introduction. Someone else is coming into the waiting room. It's not a committee member, Madam Secretary. Minutes for committees are somewhat a bit more informal. They're for our reference. So if there are typos and things like that, I'm sure the secretary would be glad to correct them later afterwards. But if there's something substantive, please raise it now. Okay, not seeing any further objections, I'm going to ask if there's any objections to approving the minutes with the understanding that Mr. Latham may get with the secretary regarding non-substantive typos. Okay, seeing no objections, those are approved under those conditions. Now, for the main event, we are on proposal R, which better not turn into proposal P, Mr. Latham. I see
hope
that
not.
grin. I see that grin. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the proposal as it stood.
For liberty.
And I note that you sent over several cascading substitutes, if that's the way we'd want to put it. But I think they're probably more considered amendments, but I'm going to let you drive that bus because that belongs to you. The process the committee finds itself in right now is what is on the screen. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where we left off. Is that correct to your recollection, Mr. Latham?
Yeah, in fact, I went off of, I guess, our working version to create the
Okay.
amendments. I did have maybe a point of parliamentary inquiry, and I think I put that in all of the various substitutes. At the very bottom, there's this reference to a table, and you'll have to scroll all the way to the bottom. I just want to make sure that reference, see where it says very bottom, per RONR T8 number 13.
Yes.
And that may be all correct, although.
Yes, that is tinted page number 8. It's item number 13 on tinted page 8.
Yeah, it's not a table. It's a reference to an entry on that page.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how
Oh.
those tinted pages are referred to when you're doing a reference. It's T1, T2. You'll notice that in the chair's master proposal worksheet as well, with one of Mr. Roulette's new proposals where he's talking about a dedicated mic. You'll notice I reference a bunch of T pages, and those are the tinted pages in Roberts.
Great. Okay. And if you look at that, I mean,
TA?
if you look at that, I would say it doesn't explicitly say right at number 13 that a convention special rule of order requires a 2/3 vote with notice. But I will say I did a little further research, and I did land on that's what that reference was talking about. And so it's just not immediately apparent, I would say, from that citation. So I just, I throw that out, and maybe it's worth, throwing an additional reference in there.
It doesn't require notice. So I would agree with you. It does require a 2/3 vote to amend, but they can be suspended with a 2/3 vote or a majority of the entire convention membership. So I will fix that in the form. With this form, just an FYI, I think this originally came from Colorado or something with a little bit of different rules. Is what you were pointing out the notice part, or was there another issue you had?
Nope, the whole thing. And just, I don't want to get too hung up on it, but I ended up looking at that and wondering, had the question I had. So I think we can move on, but just, at some point in time, I guess we can change the form and just for future
Yeah, no, I'll
amendment.
change the 4 and probably the bullet point ahead of it, put the bylaws and convention rules require a 2/3 vote. And then at the end, put something about suspension, because I do think that last bullet point is incorrect. I think you are absolutely correct there.
All right.
What I'd like to do here, though, because working in these columns, Mr. Roulette keeps coming in and out, is fine for when we're doing our report, but I find it somewhat cumbersome when we're working on amendments. So I just copied everything and put it down here. I think it makes it easier to work with when we can see it without the columns. So where would you like to start, Mr. Latham?
Well, so is what we have in front of us, maybe not immediately in front of us, is this kind of our existing proposal now?
Yes.
All right. Then maybe, I don't know how to go about doing this, but I guess the motion would be to look at excuse somebody, the second substitute. And that focuses, I believe, on the issue of none of the above.
Okay, let's
not
pull
mistaken.
that up. And can you point, so it's in this highlighted, no, this is forward tie breaking.
Yeah, and I know, and that'll be for later, but I did research that question a bit, and we had some question about forwards and backwards, and I believe the language in the existing proposal is forwards tie breaking. I find myself persuaded that backwards tie breaking might be the way to go, and so that's a later amendment. I believe that's the one right after this.
Okay, this is R2 though. So
Yeah,
let's
so
go
we're not
look at-
fixing. Okay, go. Yeah, if you want to jump
we
ahead
could go to
R3.
R3 because I don't really think the order was important. Let's see what R3 is. No, did I do the same thing? Did I miss label
No, I think that's
something?
right.
One
I think
second.
that's right.
Let's just pull them all up here. And here's R4. Okay,
And you'll just notice that R4 is a lot shorter than the other ones because basically we take out some of the operational language and just say we're using preferential
Okay.
voting.
Okay, so we're on R2. What are the actual changes though from R2 between R1? Like what are you going to be moving? Is it?
I
So
believe
if you-
it's just the additional H.
H, that's what I was going to say, because here's the original proposal only goes to G. So in R2, you added H, which is none of the above. Whoops. I'm just going to type that out because copying it is making my screen go crazy. So the amendment you wish to make is to add H, that none of the above shall be treated, does it say as any other candidate?
Yes.
And let's just highlight that change. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Latham? And then I do see Mr. Roulette's hand.
Sure. I just think that's going to be logistically an easier process to carry out in treating none of the above as a candidate that can be defeated. I'm aware of just an alternative proposal where none of the above, I guess, survives each round, and which can be done, but I hear is more difficult both from a hand counting perspective and if we were going to ask some computer program vendor to create an algorithm to do that, that would be a little trickier. I think I want to say I've read, if my memory serves me right, I've read somewhere, it might even be OPAVote's website where they said, don't do this. So anyway, I think that's the reason. And I don't think we lose much by doing it this way. So that's it.
Okay, and I'll get in line behind Mr. Roulette. Mr. Roulette?
Yeah, I also think, if memory serves me correctly, that this also changes it from the secretary shall say what the results are to the chair shall say what the results are. I think that those were the two edits from substitute 2.
If you look on G, we had already changed that at the end of last meeting.
Okay.
I think that was one of the last changes that we made. Okay. With none of the above shall be treated as any other candidate. Did OPAVote mention none of the above? Because if it, I don't doubt you. I would just be pleased to start seeing none of the above if it was mentioned in OPAVote, because I don't recall that, but they add to their documentation all the time.
And don't hold me to that, but I have some memory of the discussion. I'll look while we're chatting.
Certainly. With RCV, I think that's the only way that you can do none of the above. I heard you say it probably could do another, be treated where it survives. And this could just be me. I see the mathematician is in line after me. You could probably explain how it can be. My brain doesn't see how it can be. We do lose a little something with that I think we need to base head on, in that when you actually manually do, and I'm not speaking against this, I'm more speaking for the committee's information. When we manually do multiple rounds, people can vote for none of the above again. Once they see who was eliminated, say, you had Jill, John, and Jojo or whatever. And if their favorite candidate was Jojo and got eliminated because they were in the bottom, they might switch to none of the above. So we do lose something. Now, the question is whether it's worth it for this alternative methods. And that's something that both the convention floor and the committee will need to be considered. I just wanted to get that up front, that there is a little something that does get lost in doing that. But I think it's inevitable. Dr. Moulton.
Thank you. I strongly favor this approach. And I think you lose less than you think, because if none of the above is a candidate, then you just put none of the above. You put it below all the ones that you like, and you can then put it at the end. And I think you could just not list the ones you don't like, is my understanding, but correct me if I'm wrong. So, I think this is just the best approach. It retains none of the above as an option, and it's the simplest implementation, and I think it'll work with most all the computer programs. So I encourage people to vote for this amendment.
Thank you, Dr. Moulton. Mr. Molman?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can do NOTA as a candidate or as a concept. I actually like it as a candidate better, personally. I like elections to come to a conclusion, and even as we do NOTA today, and it would be a change, just to be clear. We end up in scenario 2012, where Mark Rutherford ended up tied with NOTA in the last round, and so he didn't defeat NOTA, and that caused a whole next day start over from scratch thing. Elections have to end at some point, and so I do think, I personally favor NOTA as a candidate. If I thought that was going to torpedo all of our work, I'd accept NOTA as a concept rather than a candidate. But I think that I agree with the points made that all the software out there can handle NOTA as a candidate. If they can do ranked choice, they can handle that right out of the gate. We don't have to have any custom code. We don't have to have any concerns about some vendor doesn't support this, does support this. Oops, they used to support it, now they don't. None of that. Everyone can handle candidates. And so I think it is a good choice. I just, I would vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just listening to your discussion on this point, it sounded like you were referencing multiple ballots, and under B, there's only one ballot, so people don't have a chance to change where NOTA is on their ballot or on their voting.
For clarification, I was referring to how we currently do it.
Oh, okay.
Where you could go, 10 rounds, to finally elect an officer. So I was just contrasting it to present.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Latham, I don't have an amendment, but there's something I'd like to throw out there. We could take a look at our current rules. What happens? Do we need to explicitly say, because this has been a controversy and many states handle this differently. I could tell you Colorado handles it differently than the National Party does. what if in a ranked ballot, somebody puts, using the names I used before, John number 1, Noda number 2, Jojo number 3, like, does ranking other candidates lower than none of the above void a ballot? I'm probably saying this inartfully. Or
Well, no, I know
we
what
need
you're.
to address this.
Well, I suppose it's a choice whether we address it or not. And no, I think I've heard you and maybe others discuss that before. And the suggestion is that it just, we say it void stuff. I would rather not get into voiding a ballot for someone doing that, even though just if you take the letter of the law, none of the above means, if you're putting Noda at 4, did you say you didn't want 1, 2, and 3? And really none of the above, it's kind of a poor fit because, we talked about, do you want to do none of the remainder? And I just think we keep it simple by treating it as a candidate. You can rank candidates above it. You can rank candidates below it. And then that's the easiest way to discern, I think, the voting delegates' intent. It would just be kind of my thoughts on that. I'm easy on that point, maybe one way or the other. I did want to just say I did find, I think, the OPA vote thing I looked at, and I didn't remember it correctly. They don't like Noda at all. It's not a matter of not round by round. They just don't like it at all. And we obviously disagree as libertarians by and large on that point.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Latham. Mr. Seebeck?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at this very issue right now with the Alabama bylaws because it's a similar problem, but doesn't have the ranked choice attached to it. There's a couple of ways to look at it. I'm not advocating for one way or the other here. I'm just going to throw them out for thought. One is you could take the idea of someone listing a person candidate, for lack of a better term, and then Noda as spoiling the ballot. You can take the viewpoint of a Noda after a name, and this is for like a multiple person ballot here I'm talking about, that Noda after a name and then before other names are saying would discount those other names after Noda, meaning nobody else, as Mr. Latham was referring to. Or you can simply count it as a vote for Noda, and may the tallies work out the way they work out. It may be simplest to do the third, but it's really a question of what's the right answer. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. For simplicity for ranked choice, I favor what Mr. Latham said, and I think that actually kind of does answer the question. If it's treated, quote unquote, as any other candidate, that means you can rank below or above because that's how any other candidate is treated. I just wanted to bring to the committee's attention, if you see up on the screen, our past Rule 8 says each delegate may cast a vote for either none of the above or 1 vote per candidate for any number of candidates. Every ballot with a vote for none of the above or 1 or more candidates is counted as 1 ballot cast. A vote for none of the above shall be ignored. It doesn't void the ballot. It ignores none of the above, which is the opposite approach of some states. Colorado voids the ballot. In this one and the national bylaws, it's just ignored. However, I just don't think that translates to RCV, and that the way Mr. Latham has it here with it being treated as any other candidate is really the only way it can be smoothly done. Is there any further discussion or debate on this amendment? I might be pushing my luck. Is there any objection to this amendment? Okay, seeing none, this amendment passes. we will move on to, is it R3, Mr. Latham?
I believe so.
And is this the backwards tie breaking one?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So we would just swap out E's.
Okay, so let me take this E. Let's go back to here. So let me paste this here. I'm going to paste it first as no formatting. So, okay. So what you're suggesting is to strike the former E and insert the highlighted language. Do I understand you properly?
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can pull it up. Where did I put it? So this is now, R3. Okay. Yeah, it looks like you.
Okay. Would you like to speak to this, Mr. Latham?
I will try. It presses my mathematical competency. Maybe we have some more mathy folks in the committee, on the committee, who can better explain this. And I did I think link some articles discussing this topic and maybe advocating in favor of backwards. And I guess the way I understand why backwards tie breaking is better than forwards tie breaking. So the idea is like, so let's say you get to you're in round 4 of these ranked choice voting and voting transfers, but there's a tie at some level. How do you break that tie? Well, to me, intuitively, it's like, well, who had the strongest support in the first round? That might be one way of breaking the tie. So that's forward tie breaking. Well, some of the folks, like the mathy folks who look at this, say, well, actually, it might be more, it might show more support as support kind of bubbles up to work backwards from the round. So rather than say you're at round 4, go back to round 3 and see which of those 2 candidates had the most support. Because you will actually see kind of who aggregated more support at, doing it backwards looking. So that's I think the argument, hopefully in a nutshell, and maybe others can explain it better than I did, but hopefully I did an okay job.
And it's funny, Mr. Latham, I did a whole video on this and I probably couldn't explain it again either. I'm not very mathy, but speaking of mathy, Dr. Moulton.
I won't get into the math. I don't really have objections to either way of doing it, but I wondered if Mr. Latham could enlighten us whether the existing major programs out there do both, or whether they just do one or just do the other, like OpaVote, for instance. Do they already facilitate this? If we choose one method and not the other method, are we limiting our options for software?
The short answer is I don't know, but if you give me a moment. Oh, okay, great.
OpaVote does, when you enable expert mode, you say how you could either pick ties or broken randomly, forwards or backwards. So OpaVote at least does allow that. Okay, did you have anything further, Dr. Moulton?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so I'm looking at this and at first, I think Mr. Latham feels my pain, where depending on the moment you ask, I think would depend upon which one I favor. And I guess it's going to be a priority as to who's the candidate that more. I'm trying to say this in a way that's not denigrating, but trying to get my point across. The candidates that more people are okay with, or like or the candidate in which more people are passionate about. I tend to prefer the one that had the most first choice votes. Of course, I'm not voting on this unless it's to cause or break a tie. But I think I'm starting to fall on the side of the one we had before here. But I think this is more of a taste thing. Whether you want more of the general consensus where no one's thrilled, but everyone's kind of happy, or the one that has people that passionately support them, but perhaps people that also don't. Mr. Molman.
Yeah, I just want to throw in, I don't have a preference personally, but what about the scenario where we have to recount this by hand? And I'm throwing that out there because I've counted plenty of these types of elections by hand. Kentucky's been using ranked choice for, 11 years, I think. And so my concern is that if we codify a particular procedure for splitting it, other than random, that part of any hand count is also then going to have to calculate that particular procedure as well. So while ranked choice tallied by computer, this is no problem, right? Forwards, backwards, it doesn't matter because it can figure all that out very, very quickly. But human beings having to do it with paper ballots, that is pain, a lot of pain, because it's a whole lot of extra math and a whole lot of extra tallying. And I just want to say that from a logistical standpoint of how do we get a recount done in a timely manner, it may be better to just go with the random coin flip, accepting whatever coin flip does occur through the automated mechanism, right? Because that would be part of that is the random coin flip happened, rather than having to recalculate all of that math. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as a logistical thing. Like I said, personally, forwards, backwards, I have no preference. And honestly, random, though less granular, is really just a matter of the logistics. So just throwing it out there.
Hey, Mr. Roulette.
To answer Mr. Molman's concern, I'd like to point out that you only actually, I believe, have to rank ties or break ties when the two tied people are both at either a majority, in which case you may, in which actually they cannot both have a majority. Well, okay, done thinking out loud. Or when one of them will be knocked out by being the lower ranked person. And therefore you don't have to break every tie. You just have to break the important ones. From what I imagine that the substitute 3 would be easier if you had to hand tally it, but I'm not 100% certain about that. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Latham.
Sure. Just responding to some of the comments that were made on breaking a tie, and I gather the algorithm could do that, but then the problem would be when you're doing the hand count, and if you recall from kind of our prior I guess what we would call a proposal that passed, we are kind of defaulting to the physical ballot. What's going to you could have a random tiebreaker that's different when you do the hand count as opposed to when you do the computer count. Then what do you do? But I think we still default to the paper. So I would rather have some other way, that maybe requires us to break those ties by a coin flip randomly, and this tie breaking method, this backwards or forwards, whichever you want to do, I think reduces the likelihood that you're going to have those coin flips. I did want to also add that I found some language on the OPAVote website on tie breaking forward and backward and random, and then I just want to make the other point. I think another virtue that just for me gives a slight nod to the backwards tie breaking is I think it does provide that more granular view of delegate support for a particular candidate. Again, because more information is going to be aggregated round by round, whether if you start from the front and work your way, you don't have as much information as you will in subsequent rounds as to how people are expressing their preferences.
Thank you, Mr. Latham. I was going to say some of the same points you did. We can't be introducing randomness if there is a recount ordered, because randomness is in fact random and you're not going to have the same result. I've hand counted RCV ballots before, and once you know the method for breaking a tie, because you are keeping track of your rounds on a piece of scratch paper, or even if you're doing it in piles, it might take a little bit longer, but it's really not that much more difficult. If we are going to allow a hand recount, we can't introduce randomness. We have to introduce consistency. On the issue of backwards, forwards, I don't necessarily think the backwards tie breaking adds more granularity. I think the forwards ones honors people's first choice votes, which if a candidate got more first choice than another one that they're tied with, I think the candidate that had more first choice votes should have priority. I'm starting to really now very, very much favor the original proposal. Dr. Moulton?
Yeah, on the subject of hand recounts, I mean, it seems to me it would be a little bit simpler with the forward than the backward, because if for some reason you didn't write down what happened previously, all the first counts are going to be in that pile, because they're never going to move piles. So you can look in that pile to find all the first counts, so you don't have to backtrack. Whereas backtracking with the backward might be a little hard. But on the other hand, like, you really should be writing down the numbers every round anyway. So as long as they know to write down the numbers every round, which really should be something you do, then it doesn't add time if you have the numbers. So I don't think it's really an issue. Personally, I would just leave it to the machines and do away with the hand counts anyway. But I mean, either way is fine with me. I'm not gonna argue too much about this. I just wanted to make sure the machines could deal with it.
Mr. Latham?
Yeah, just maybe, and following up on Dr. Moulton's point, yeah, I want to say we maybe did this in a prior proposal as well, but if we didn't, we just talked about keeping a record. Oh, in fact, it's on F. Retain the record of all voting rounds. But the thinking is, I think if you have a spreadsheet, and a lot of these programs would have it, but even if you did a hand count, you would have a spreadsheet showing round by round. And then this forward and backward would basically, I think, allow the person hand counting, say, do we want to start, let's say we have 5 columns, right, for 5 rounds. Well, if we're at column 5 and we have a tie, backwards tie breaking would mean we start at column 4, then column 3, then column 2, then column 1. Forward would mean we look to column 1 first, then column 2, then column 3, and column 4. So that might help just in whichever way you want to go, having those numbers at the ready. So I don't think it's going to be too laborious of a process to break those ties and figure out which candidates, have more support at any given round.
Thank you. Just one other quick point, so I'm not repeating. Randomly doesn't particularly bother me unless you're dealing with the final round. I would hate to be the party chair that won randomly. I think there would be a cloud over their entire term. And I don't think delegates would feel real good about it, where if they knew there was a definite process for it, they would feel better about it. In earlier rounds, I don't think it's quite as, I mean, it is quite as random, but I think it just doesn't feel quite as random, where if it's the final decider, I don't think anyone would feel good about that. So, obviously, if whatever method we use doesn't result in a result, I think then everyone would feel okay with randomly. But having random as the default, I think people would feel really weird about that. Is there any further discussion? Just to be clear, we are basically debating between forward or backward tie breaking. The first proposal that we left off with last meeting was forward tie breaking. Mr. Latham moved to strike that and insert in pretty much the same language, except for that makes it backwards tie breaking. So it is really a matter of preference. I know there's going to be objections. So if there's no further debate on this, we're going to go to a vote, but I want to explain again, and I want Mr. Latham to jump in if I mess up this explanation. And I do see, let's let Dr. Moulton talk first.
Just real quick, I do want to point out that there have been tie votes, the final before in the past for judicial committee specifically. Not that we were using ranked choice, but there's been a final vote. The convention closes, and they've rolled a die. So it's happened in the party's history.
Thank you, Dr. Moulton. Okay, so where we are between the two. So the substitute, in highlighted, would say if there's a tie, and as Mr. Rolette said, a tie that like makes a difference as to who advances to the next round, or perhaps who wins, the tie will be broken by looking, say you're on round 5, at looking at who was ahead in round 4. And if they were still tied in round 4, at who was ahead in round 3. So you continuously go backwards in the rounds. If you get all the way up to round 1 and they were still tied in round 1, then it would be broken randomly. The original proposal that's being proposed to be struck out, if you were in round 5 and you had people that were tied, instead of going back to round 4, you'd go all the way back to round 1, which in effect says who had the most first place votes. They would the one that break the tie. If they had the exact same number of first place votes, then you'd go to number 2 and who had the most second place votes. So it's just going in opposite directions, though if on each of those stages they were still just neck and neck the entire time, then it would be broken by a tie. So a yes vote would use backwards tie breaking, in which case you would go to the previous round and see who was ahead. A no vote would leave in place forward tie breaking, in which you go back to the first round to see who was ahead. So hopefully everyone clears what we're voting on. A yes vote makes it backwards tie breaking. A no vote will leave it as forward tie breaking. I see Mr. Molman has a question or perhaps another debate point.
It is not a debate point, Madam Chair. I need to step away. I apologize. I'm buried with work, and I would like to. Dr. Moulton has been engaged in this. I don't feel like he's uninformed on this issue, so I just want to step back, let him take and run. Whoever, I mean, obviously he's the first alternate, but I feel comfortable letting him run with this. I'm just buried in work. I really need to buckle down. It's a long story, but that's a short version.
Okay, so to paraphrase, instead of Jesus take the wheel, it's Dr. Moulton take the wheel.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Got it. All right, Madam Secretary, if you could call the roll. You're muted, Madam Secretary.
Sorry. Arrowwood, I'm going to say yes. Rocco?
No.
Sizelski?
No.
Latham,
Yes.
Martin,
No.
Molman, Chuck Moulton, sorry.
Yes.
All right. Rowlett,
Yes.
Mike Ruffo,
No.
Mike Seebeck.
Abstain.
All right. Madam Chair, at this point, we have 4 yes, 4 no, and 1 abstain.
You guys.
Aha.
I am going to vote no. I do favor forward tie breaking. So that amendment fails. We are back to the original proposal of forward tie breaking.
Madam
Search.
Chair,
Yes, Mr. Molman?
I just have to note the irony of there being a tie on the controversy on how to break a tie. I just had to point that out.
And the fact that I was so confident earlier that my vote wouldn't matter. Okay, so that was our 3, correct? Now we are on our 4. Let's pull that up. So R4 deletes all of this in the following manner stuff. So, and it just says by preferential voting, since preferential voting is defined in Roberts. So let me get this over here. Help me out, Mr. Latham. So the election shall be conducted by preferential voting. Okay.
Right.
Conduct. So you are.
So we're taking out, I think, old A, B, and C. And well, notice, by the way, I did retain backwards tie breaking. So we're going to want to save forwards tie breaking.
So by preferential voting. So
Nomination.
right here, I'm going
That
to.
goes.
That goes, but I want to do it in a little bit of a different color because we've got other strike throughs here. So I'm going to do that in.
Officers.
So that goes, and we're wanting to insert this. And let me go look at 4 again. Then it starts with in the event of a tie. So all of this goes. And everything would be relettered accordingly. Am I correct?
I just want to make sure on D, do we lose D2 if no candidate receives a majority of votes? I guess that goes. Yeah.
Okay, I meant to not do this as a highlight, but do it the way I just did the other ones, which is like this. Okay. So this would have the first sentence read, nominations for party officers shall be from the floor. The election shall be conducted by preferential voting. And then it strikes all the mechanics of what preferential voting is, since that is defined in our parliamentary authority, and the rest remains as we've discussed. I know it says E there, they will be automatically relettered. So it would be A, B, C, D, where it now says E, F, G, H. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Latham?
Sure. And just I had heard a comment, I think, during our last discussion on this, where I think there was just at least a request or desire to simplify, I guess in the brevity caucus spirit, the language. And so this is a proposal to do that. I'm, again, kind of neutral on this. I want to say, just as I read the rules, there is a section in that preferential voting part about being explicit in the process you want to use. But I also think this gets the job done just the same way, just by using the term of art that's in our parliamentary authority. And I think the process is pretty intuitive. We are kind of tying up some open-end questions about backwards, forwards, tie breaking, and how do we treat none of the above. We've already addressed those. So this is just one other way to address that issue. I guess I will say that the hesitation I have in going this simple is because we would be doing this for the first time. A lot of people might have some questions about ranked choice voting still and just want to see a more explicit process. So my thinking was maybe this is an amendment that needs to come a couple conventions down the road. If we adopt this and the convention adopts this and it becomes part of our standing rules, then we can simplify it a bit. So, but anyway, that is the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Latham. I will speak in favor and a suggestion of one potential amendment that I'm not going to make, just for thoughts. I do think simplicity is better here. Otherwise, we are going to be arguing about the wording of all of that other stuff because libertarians love to do that. And we'll be arguing. We will just be arguing. I think that's probably all that needs to be said. Though, to address your concern, Mr. Latham, it might, and I know this isn't the wording preferences in the ranked choice voting community keeps changing. However, what might ease or aid in understanding is after preferential voting, we put in parentheses instant runoff voting, because I think everyone knows what that is. And I think that might cover some of the concerns people have. I'm not making that amendment, but I'm just suggesting that might be amendment we want to add. But otherwise, I'm speaking in favor of this. I think this is much cleaner and it's not a wall of text. Mr. Rolette.
As a member of the Brevity Caucus, it pains me to do this, but I oppose this amendment for two reasons. For the first reason, this requires that the delegate have a copy of Robert's Rules of Order or a buddy with a copy of Robert's Rules of Order in order to know precisely how this will work. And while I think that if you do it a couple times, you won't need to refer to the book very often, I don't like having to, I want people to not be forced to learn Roberts as much as it is possible for them to not have to if they choose not to. So I think having the wall of text, even though it is a wall of text, it makes it easier for the average delegate to the convention to know what's going to happen, when, and why. The other reason I oppose it is because I think it's unlikely to happen, but it's certainly a possibility that the authorities at Robert's Rules could, in some future edition, make a change to what preferential voting is. And that change may be minor to them, but may impact us in a way that we don't like. And so I don't think that scenario is likely, but if we can avoid it simply by, killing one or two trees and making our bylaws a little bit more explicit, then I'm in favor of that. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Rolette. I'm not a member of the Brevity Caucus, but I'm deciding I'm going to be an enforcer of the Brevity Caucus. So after this meeting, you shall be whipped with a wet noodle. The thing with what if Roberts changes comes up all the time. We just had a new revision. There's not going to be another new revision for probably at least a decade. So and there is plenty of advance notice as to the changes that they're considering. And this could be said about a million things in our bylaws. And we could be frozen by that potential fear. Remember, this is a standing rule. If the delegates learn of some change in our parliamentary authority that they don't like, they can always suspend the standing rule and tweak it how they want. This isn't a bylaw. So it makes it a lot more flexible because it is a standing rule. I also don't think it requires people to learn Roberts, just as the rest of our bylaws and other things don't require people to learn Roberts. It does require the chair to, but I think we should expect that of the chair to begin with, or they have a parliamentarian there to assist them. At the beginning of even the type of voting we do now, someone always asks, what does this mean? So the convention chair is going to have to explain all these steps. It's not going to require someone to have memorized Roberts. At the beginning of the voting, the convention chair will explain how to do the thing. Having all of this extra language plus the convention chair explaining it is, I think, going to lead to more ambiguities and arguments, which I don't think any of us really want to increase that. I think we are way over our allotted quota of ambiguities and arguments at a libertarian convention, just because we all have oppositional defiance disorder. So I don't think this at all requires somebody to know Roberts. It does require a chair who can explain things well. And that is something we should be expecting out of every chair. Mr. Latham.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I would hope that this more explicit process might be just even printed, maybe not in this exact form, but in some fashion on ballots themselves. So that would be a reference for a lot of delegates just to know how this process goes. So even though it wouldn't be included in this proposed rule, and this is, maybe it's, I don't know if it makes a difference that this is a proposed rule rather than a bylaw, but just a proposed rule, that can help a lot, right? And of course, in jurisdictions where ranked choice voting is used, there's often just kind of an instruction to the voter on how to rank their ballot. So just want to throw that out there, that I think that information still could be communicated to delegates, just not necessarily through this proposed rule if we decide to go with this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Latham. And that is, in fact, an excellent point, I believe. Our current delegation tally sheets have such instructions for the various kinds of ballots. Of course, it's the delegation tally sheet. It's not something that goes to each individual delegate, but it certainly could. Anyone who's been on my teller team has seen those sheets where it even tells and we can look at an example of one if someone from the committee does a point of information would like to see what one looks like. But it gives a lot of instructions, including on how to, put a line through after 4 to indicate 5. I mean, the sheets are very granular that get passed out to the delegation chairs. So there is no reason that there couldn't be instructions such as this distributed out to the delegates as well. I think that's a very wise suggestion. Anyone further? Okay, I'm sorry, I am eating candy. I'm a little bit low in sugar right now. So hopefully you don't hear me chewing. Okay, seeing no further debate or discussion, we will move to a roll call vote. And what we are voting on is getting rid of everything that is in the purple strike through and adding, I want to highlight it so it's obvious what we're adding. And adding just that phrase, by preferential voting. Is everyone clear on what we're voting on, or would you like the whole thing as it would read if passed read aloud? Let me know. Okay.
Yeah, could we
You would like to hear
get
it?
Yeah, I would, please.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So if passed, it would read, nominations for party officers shall be from the floor. The election shall be conducted by preferential voting. In the event of a tie in any round, which makes a difference, and which candidate advances, ties shall be broken by retaining the candidate that had the most first choice votes. And if still a tie, then the most second choice votes, etc. If this method results in a tie up through the current round, the tie shall be broken randomly. The next number, which would be B, the secretary shall retain the record of all voting rounds and make it available to delegates upon request. what would then be C, the chair shall announce the winner of the election after votes have been fully tabulated. The chair's announcement of the election outcome shall include results from each voting round. And then I think that would end up being D. None of the above shall be treated as any other candidate. All right, Mr. Seebeck?
I got a point of information. How does this tie breaking here with retaining the candidate that had the most first choice votes, et cetera, factor in on preferential voting? Because I thought that was more tied into the ranked choice stuff.
Preferential voting is ranked choice voting.
Okay.
Okay, anyone further with any questions before we proceed to a vote? Okay, Madam Secretary, and to be clear, a yes vote will delete everything in kind of that pink strike through and add in that highlighted area, and the remaining blue will be relettered accordingly. Whenever you're ready, Madam Secretary.
All right. Arrowwood, I'm going to say yes. Bracco,
No.
Sazelski,
Yes.
Latham,
I'm going to pass.
okay. Martin,
Yes.
Chuck Moulton,
I'm going to pass as well.
all right. Rowlett?
Nope.
Did you say no, sir?
Correct.
right.
No.
All right, just want to be sure. Mike Seebeck.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the passes. Rob Latham.
I'll now vote yes.
All right. Chuck Moulton,
Yes.
Tom Rowlett.
He already voted no.
All right, okay.
Madam Secretary, my vote was not taken. It's Rufo, yes.
Okay. Yes, okay. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 yes, 1, 2 no's. Madam Chair, at this point, we have 6 yes. And 3 no's.
Yeah, I will not be voting. So
Mhm.
that passes. Mr. Latham?
Yeah, I wanted to move one amendment, maybe 2 amendments. I don't know if we can do them all together. The issues are this, and I think, Madam Chair, you talked about putting after preferential voting in parens, instant runoff voting. I'd like to move that amendment, also known as instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting. I'd like to include both terms. And then also, actually, this is where we have that et cetera down there in our tiebreaker paragraph. I'd like to replace that with and so on. I think I liked that language from the prior version.
One moment, let me just clean up this a bit. No, we can't really do them together. So the first one here, you are looking to add, so to be by preferential voting, were you looking to do the parentheses or?
Right, or I don't know if that, I thought you suggested something similar.
I did, I just
Yeah.
didn't know if that, so
Yep.
also known as,
And maybe, oh yeah, I was going to say either quotes, but I guess capitalizing them would be fine.
is this what you were suggesting?
Yes. Do we want to add a period there?
Well, there's going to be a colon, wouldn't there be? No,
yes.
no, I guess it would be a period because
It's a sentence.
it doesn't say in the following manner any longer. So yeah, there would be a period.
Okay.
So this is the amendment. Let me just highlight it, which is to add after by preferential voting, open paren, also known as instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting, close paren, period. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Latham?
I hope it's pretty self-explanatory, so nothing further.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this? I'm going to somewhat, I'm not going to curse myself again to say that my vote won't count on anything. I kind of prefer just saying one or the other, because these terms seem the RCV community, instant runoff vote, it's like all poodles are dogs, but not all dogs are poodles. Ranked choice is more of an umbrella term that refers to a lot of different methodologies that are types of preferential voting. Now, I think it's somewhat obvious in that this is a single winner race, what type we're talking about, but instant runoff voting tends to be the term for single winner ranked choice races. Adding a multiplicity of terms kind of bothers me. I don't mind one explanatory, but two explanatory is, I don't know, it bothers me a little bit. Mr. Latham.
Sure. So my understanding is that the umbrella term is the single transferable vote, which could apply to either single winner races or multiple winner races. And I mean, you yourself in discussing this talked about the RCV community. And maybe you're looking at it as an umbrella concept, but just the way I understand it, it's pretty single member race, I think, still in just the current vernacular. And so just I want people to connect, because they're probably maybe or have heard of RCV in other contexts. And look at that. Well, it's Wikipedia, so
No, but this
I'm
isn't
just gonna say.
STV always means multi-winner, at least right now.
Yeah. Well, so okay. I will say I have seen it used in a single winner context. So, and you're right that the electoral reform community has been hopping among several choices. But I would say, and then the problem. So again, the problem I have with instant runoff is the criticism I've heard in the past is, well, it's not so instant, is it? And then that just, is an argument for those with oppositional defiance disorder to go off on. So I hate to, invite that if we don't need to. So that's my thinking. I think we can limit it to just two commonly known terms, and down the road maybe simplify or go with one.
At least right now, what Wikipedia, its purpose is to elect the majority choice it's single member.
Or single winner, yeah.
So, I mean, that is the current terminology, but as you and I, they keep coming up with new ones. But the way it was explained to me is that ranked choice voting is the umbrella. And then under ranked choice, you have STV and IRV. IRV single, STV is multi-winner. Because STV gives you almost a proportional.
Can I just ask what, I don't think we've seen the Wikipedia entry. Is there a Wikipedia entry on ranked choice voting?
Let's look.
Not that it should be our authority for many things in life, but just since we're discussing it.
Yeah, it says ranked choice voting may be used as a synonym for ranked voting, instant runoff voting, a specific ranked voting system with single winner districts, or single transferable vote, a specific ranked voting system with multi-winner.
What if you click on that link?
Which one? Ranked voting?
Up, and just see where that one. Yeah, it doesn't have the dash in between. Oh, right. That's probably what happens. Well, yeah, doesn't give us anything.
Yeah, it's a disambiguation thing in, or redirect, I mean, in Wikipedia. It all leads to the same place.
So anyway, I think they are sixes, and that kind of suggests it's a synonym, and I just think it's commonly used right now and commonly promoted. So anyway, that's why I think it ought to be included. I think it's the more well-known, frankly, right now. I think instant runoff voting, at least in my neck of the woods, is just kind of falling out of favor as a used term, but it may be a more specific term for some folks. So that's it.
Okay. Anyone
Maybe I'll
further?
just add, since we saved all that extra language, we now have a little room to elaborate somewhat.
Okay, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I'll just add that, as somebody who's kind of new to this whole kind of voting and all that, I mean, I did read up on it, but the term ranked choice voting just is much more explanatory to me and understandable than any of the other terms we've been kicking around. And I would recommend that we just use that in parentheses. That would be my suggestion. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, are you making an amendment? Because once we pass this, I mean, this is the opportunity. If someone wants to strike or rank choice voting, or if someone wants to strike as instant runoff voting, or this is the time to do that if that's what someone wants to do.
Well, if I can do that, I would jump on the chance. So yes, I am making an amendment.
So you're moving to amend to strike instant runoff voting or.
Yes, please.
So it's an amendment to the amendment. Did you wish to speak to that further, Mr. Martin?
No, I think I just did. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regrettably, I think I'm going to speak against this a little bit. The idea for the simplicity was, again, simplicity. I guess so it was simplicity for simplicity. When you say also known as ranked choice voting, I'm not so sure then it makes it clear, because we've now added to the terminology. I think we've just introduced an ambiguity. I think it's pretty clear. Preferential voting is in our parliamentary authority, but then you add in also known as ranked choice voting, which is not in our parliamentary authority. And then I think it somewhat becomes unclear that you have to rank them like you I don't even know how to explain it. It's just something about it that when you have it as instant runoff or ranked choice, it makes it clear that we're talking about a single winner where you rank single people with single scores. Someone in chat had brought up star. I think this somewhat adds some ambiguity where people might be able to think they can rank two people as number one, whereas instant runoff voting makes it clear it's not. That's a specific type of ranked choice voting. So to me, to use an analogy would be like, this contest will only be I'm trying to think of an example, but I think if we're going to put in parentheses, it needs to be a narrower term. rather than broadening it even less clear than our parliamentary authority. So I'm opposed to this change. Anyone further? Okay, so we will do a roll call vote on the amendment to the amendment. A yes vote will strike instant runoff voting or, so that the amendment would, which hasn't been passed yet, would read also known as ranked choice voting. A no vote would leave them both in and still leave the option for somebody, if they wish, to strike or ranked choice voting, so that we're kind of doing a head off between the two if someone wished to make that amendment. But right now, what we are voting on is striking instant runoff voting or. Madam Secretary, if you could take the roll when you're ready.
All right. Arrowwood, I'm going to pass. Bracco?
Express abstention.
All right. Szelski?
Abstain.
Latham?
I'm going to pass as well.
All right. Martin?
I will abstain.
Chuck Moulton?
I abstain.
You guys are killing me.
Tom Rowlett?
I have an opinion, but I want so badly to abstain. Oh, guys.
I want to see what happens if we all abstain or pass.
Yeah.
Well, one of us is
Just
going
for to
to
the hell
vote
of it.
yes, maybe.
I'll pass.
Okay. Mike Ruffo?
I don't understand why everybody's abstaining. But I'm going to join the party because I want to see what's happening. I'll abstain.
Okay. Mike Seebeck?
You guys do more abstentions than a bunch of Catholics at Lent. I hate to blow your party. I'm voting no.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the passes. Arrowwood, I'm going to say no. Latham?
Wait, did Mr. Martin at least vote for his proposed amendment?
No, he
He
abstained.
abstained.
He abstained. I'm gonna vote no and just explain. I just want to be inclusive of terminology here, and I actually agree with our chair's point. If it was just ranked choice voting, I
We
think that
can't
would.
debate during voting.
Oh,
Mr.
I can't.
Latham.
I'm not debating. Can I explain?
No,
Explain
you
my
can't.
vote?
You
No.
cannot explain your vote.
Can I put it in the chat?
I would prefer you didn't, but
I'll just shut up
After
and
we're
vote.
done.
I'll just shut up and vote now.
Tom Rowlett?
I vote no.
Okay. Let's see, 1, 2. Madam Chair, at this point, we have 0 yeses. We have 3 noes, and the others are abstains.
and I will not be voting, so this does not pass. So we are back to the, whoa, I didn't mean to, hold on, I want to redo, edit, redo. So we're back to the,
Really confuse people in the minutes.
yes. So we're back to the original. And Mr. Latham?
Yeah, I wanted to move another amendment, and that's the one just on the et cetera. Can we replace that with and so
Oh,
on?
we haven't dispensed with this amendment yet.
Oh,
We
okay.
did the amendment to the amendment.
Hold the phone. All right.
So do you have anything further on? Okay.
Nope.
Just so that we get it all out there, I actually am going to move to amend to strike or rank choice voting. Just so that everyone has all of the options and we know where we stand. So I am moving to strike or ranked choice voting, format, text, strike through, so that it would just say by preferential voting, open paren, also known as instant runoff voting, close paren, period. I've spoken to it enough. Mr. Latham.
Sure. Well, maybe now it's appropriate to make the comment I was going to make, which is I like keeping both terms in there. And I agree that if we had just left it with ranked choice voting, that could introduce an ambiguity, and that was spoken to somewhat. And so I think the inclusion of instant runoff voting is a limitation on that ambiguity, and I think cures the ambiguity. But I think there's value in keeping both terms again, because I think, again, their ranked choice voting, I think, is the more commonly promoted electoral reform. I think it's one that more people are going to be familiar with and are used to. And just the word ranking, what does it mean to express a preference? Oh, we rank them in order of a preference. Okay. So that's going to help people understand. And instant runoff is going to help people understand to some extent as well. So I speak against this proposed amendment just because it takes away a little bit of the, I think, familiarity. There, I administer a Facebook group, I think, called the Libertarian Party Ranked Choice Voting Caucus. We don't call ourselves the Libertarian Party Instant Runoff Voting Caucus. And it's a more familiar term. And we, I believe, have hundreds of members in that group.
Okay, I am actually now going to speak because you inspire me, Mr. Latham. I am also a member of that group, and I would argue that it's called the Libertarian Party Ranked Choice Voting Caucus because it's also in favor of STV. It's not only dealing with single winner races, it's dealing with all forms of ranked choice, that we want proportional representation in multi-winner races. So on that point, I think it would be illogical to call it the instant runoff voting because it would imply that we're only advocating for ranked choice in single winner races. Okay, Madam Secretary, so where we are voting on is whether or not from the amendment, this is an amendment to the amendment, is to strike or ranked choice voting so that it would just read by preferential voting, open paren, also known as instant runoff voting, close paren, period. When you're ready to take the roll, Madam Secretary.
All right, Arrowwood, I'm going to say yes. Bracco.
Express abstention.
Yes, sir. Sazelsky.
I'm not going to do the abstention thing again. I vote no.
All right. Latham.
Also no.
Martin.
Yes.
Chuck Moulton.
Yes.
Tom Rowlett.
No.
Mike Ruffo.
Yes.
Mike Seebeck.
Just because I didn't last time, I'll abstain.
You're abstaining, sir? All right.
Yeah.
People. I've deleted.
Chair, at this point, we have 4 yes, 3 no, and 2 abstains. Do you care to vote?
No, so this amendment passes. So it'll just say or instant runoff voting. We are back to the main level of amendment, which we still need to vote on. I have Mr. Latham, then Mr. Bracco.
Yeah, so I just want to move an amendment to replace et cetera with and so on.
We haven't voted on your primary amendment yet,
Oh.
Mr. Latham.
Never mind.
I will call upon you the minute we dispose of this amendment. Mr. Bracco.
So I'm actually going to speak against this amendment overall. My understanding with the striking out of the pink, because that's gone, right? We've dispensed with
Yes.
that. Was that we wanted to be referring to the parliamentary authority. And now we're kind of going away from that by adding this in my view, at least parliamentary unnecessary language. I feel like this is kind of inserting a debate point, or at least an explanation, into the bylaws itself or the convention rules. Why? Why not just go to the mic and say, oh, this is the same as instant runoff voting? Why are we putting this in the language of the document? It's completely unnecessary from a procedure standpoint.
Thank you, Mr. Bracco. Anyone further? Okay, Madam Secretary, since there is objection, we're voting on Mr. Latham's amendment now, after which he will be able to make his much anticipated other amendment. So a yes vote will insert open paren, also known as instant runoff voting, close paren. I think the period will be there no matter what. That's just a grammatical thing where we forgot to say period before. So a yes vote will insert that. A no vote will just leave it as by preferential voting, period. Whenever you're ready, Madam Secretary.
I'm going to say yes. Arrowwood. Bracco.
No.
Sazelsky.
Yes.
Latham.
I'm going to pass.
All right, sir. Martin.
Yes.
Chuck Moulton.
Yes.
Tom Rowlett.
Yes.
Mike Ruffo.
No.
Right. Mike Seebeck.
Yes.
Yes. Rob Latham.
Express abstention.
All right. Madam Chair, at this point, we have 6 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstain. Do you care to vote?
No. This passes. Now I'm going to call upon Mr. Latham, who's been chomping at the bit. Mr. Latham.
So let's replace et cetera with and so on.
So right here, you are looking to strike, et cetera, text, strike through. We're going to make that color. And instead, you're going to put, and I'll fix this, and so on, period. Get rid of that strike, format, text. Would you like to speak to that, Mr. Latham?
I think I pulled that language out of some of the articles and literature I read on the forward and backward tie breaking, and it just seemed a little more maybe formal and less kind of ad hoc than et cetera. So it's kind of a stylistic thing, but maybe it's even a little more precise.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this? I'm going to take a chance. Is there any objection to this amendment? Hearing none, this passes. So let me just clean this up. We are almost to the point where we're going to be passing this proposal on whole, but I see Mr. Latham.
So do we want to change the title of this proposal?
The title is?
Is ranked choice voting for officers? Would we do that in this process, or would we do that later?
I don't.
Because proposal are ranked choice voting for officers.
Well, that was like kind of what you called the proposal, but you
Right.
didn't have in your markup language here, a change to the title. So wait, let's go over to our bylaws and see what's presently in there. I'm just trying to find, so no, because it's right now called election of.
No, I think just my point is the proposal itself doesn't need to be renamed because it has the ranked choice voting for officers in it.
That isn't actually like the naming of it is going to be stylistic. Like for instance, Mr. Roulette submitted a proposal called Scars of Orlando. Even though that's what we're informally calling it now, I doubt in our final report we're going to call it that. This is
Come on, why not?
Yeah, this is more along the lines of like when we're doing rationales and stuff, how we title these things, since it's not part of the bylaws or convention rules. I think these are decisions we're going to make when we finalize the report. So no, I don't think we need to do that at this point.
Great. All right. Thanks.
Back to, where's the regular R? I've got way too many. There's R4, R3, R2, R right there. Okay, this is. All right. Is there any further amendments to this proposal? Because we're going to be on the final vote that passes the entire enchilada out of committee. I'm going to take a really, okay, Mr. Bracco.
Not any debate. Since all the pink language is gone, right? And that was originally part of the amendment. Could we get rid of it just to collapse this thing?
Did we want to actually keep that last piece that in the following manner? Because I think that's the original language that isn't that in the existing bylaws?
Oh, was it?
I think so.
Let's look. It was. So yes. I just need to make it red. I don't know why we were doing all this, but I'll italicize it as well to make it look normal. Okay, risky time here for me. Is there any objection to passing this proposal? Seeing none, it passes. Yay, congratulations. This was not proposal P. All right. We are at 8:25. We do have time to start the next one. I have my doubts as to whether we'll finish it, but we shall see. Let me just close all these tabs having to do with proposal R and ranked choice, just so I can clean up my screen a little. So this is one of my proposals. I barely remember it. Cleanup committee procedure language. I'll have this up on the screen. And we'd just like to remind the committee that as we get towards December, we are going to be doing a lot of consolidation of proposals because we've touched, I'm not even saying that this is one of them. I just see how many changes we've done to the convention rules where we're really going to have to strategically combine proposals and decide and what kind of cascade we want to present these. I know normally we present proposals, we put heavy weight on order of popularity. I do not think we're going to be able to do that this time. What I think we're going to need to do is the first pass is going to be level of popularity of any particular one. But if there are other ones that flow naturally from it, because when people read surveys, sometimes they don't see the bigger picture where it might be, say we have something that was super popular. Immediately after it, we might be presenting proposals that were way down on the popularity level because the delegates doing the survey didn't see the bigger picture of how they all fit in together. I keep saying this to warn you guys that we have a lot of back end work to do when we're getting ready to do our report because of how extensive of changes we've done. This is a more extensive bylaws committee than I've seen in a really long time. Some of the persons who've been in the party longer than myself, like Dr. Moulton, Mr. Roulette, you know, they may have seen ones, but in my time in the party, this is a lot. So not to discourage anyone, it's to prepare you for a lot of work we're going to need to do to whip this into understandable shape for the delegates. So Proposal T, which deals with bylaws article 11.6. I need to read the problem again, because again, it's been a while, and I'm going to read this out loud. And then we can look at the language, because this has been probably 3 months since I proposed this. So problem, the language regarding passage, and it's talking about passage of proposals, is archaic and stilted and is already basic parliamentary procedure. Any proposal of a committee must be passed by a majority of those present and voting. And it's talking about passing it out of committee, not on the floor. Additionally, with the Credentials Committee, there are separate rules and bylaws by affiliate that apply to them, and they must be considered separately. Lastly, a minority report on credentials is useless. The credentials report needs to credential people, and it is up to the floor to challenge. Any member of the Credentials Committee, except the chair, can go to a microphone and challenge a delegation. There is too much possibility as well to weaponize the Credentials Committee, and their decision needs to be the recommendation. Solution, clean up the language to remove redundancy and make explicit how these propositions need to be considered separately. So we're at Article 11.6, committee procedures. Here's the archaic language where it says a majority vote of those committee members present is necessary for a due pass recommendation. That is just such weird, bizarre language that has been in our bylaws since the 1970s. That already is basic parliamentary procedure. And it says, and in the case of the platform committee, a majority must approve each specific point separately. So I wish to strike that to say each platform, plank, and affiliate delegation submission must be approved separately by the committee. And then B, striking out where 2 or more members of the bylaws and rules committee, striking out or the credentials committee may join together to issue a minority report. I don't know why I had that. I think I wanted to put that in there and instead just struck it out there. Oh no, crap. I think I wanted to make explicit that no minority reports are permitted for the Credentials Committee. That was supposed to be blue, not red.
That's blue.
Format. What am I looking for? Text. Strike through. And I know this other column got bizarrely weird. Just look at the middle one. And I know Mike is laughing at me because he hates the 3-column format. And we have so many different proposals probably for the report. We're not going to go with the 3-column format because I just think I see Beck is laughing at me because I think it's just going to make things way complicated. So I'm going to
I've been saying that for years.
I know. You can laugh at me. You've been laughing at me for years too. We've been laughing at each other. So I'm going to copy this out and do it on the separate page here. If you want to see bylaws though, because we are going to section 6, what comes before section 6, because I think we need this for context. So if we go up to article 11. It's leading up to 6. It talks about what committees there shall be, how many people are in them, how they are appointed, how there are ranked alternates, and then it gets down to where we are with committee procedures. You might want to keep that up on another tab just so you can see 1 through 5 on how that is really something separate from 6, which we could clean up at another time. So if the proposal is passed, it would read 6 committee procedures. Each platform plank and affiliate delegation submission must be approved separately by the committee. I could see where an amendment could be there by the appropriate committee or something of that sort. B, 4 or more members of the platform committee may join together to issue a minority report regarding any plank reported to the floor of the convention. 2 or more members of the bylaws and rules committee may join together to issue a minority report regarding their business. No minority reports are permitted for the credentials committee. I believe I've spoken to it enough. Mr. Bracco.
Yeah, I don't know that I want to make a proposal at this time, but I want to concur with your assessment that end of A, the capital C committee, to me, I know it kind of has that in the existing A. It seems like it's one committee, but it's
Right.
not. Like these are 2 different things, 2 different committees, 2 different responsibilities, completely separate. I think it would probably be good to put something in there that makes it very clear. Like for the platform committee, they approve the platform plank separately. For the credential committee, they approve the state delegation or affiliate delegation separately. Like, I mean, that's super long and not how I want to word it, but something that makes that more clear that these are separate committees, but they do have like both of this requires them both to do each of their jobs as separate things.
Thank you, Mr. Latham.
Yeah, and that was my question, was what is meant by affiliate delegation submission. And now I think I'm getting that it's a credentials committee matter. And,
Yes.
and maybe one solution at the end there is approved separately by their respective committees. Although I even wonder if that ought to be clarified, further. Each platform plank must be approved separately by the platform committee. Each affiliate delegation submission must be approved separately by the credentials committee. Just throwing that out there. So, but thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to separating those out. They could all be in A. Or it could be ABC instead of just AB. I think the general idea is out here, but some tweaking in wording is needed. I would have no objection if the committee wanted to think about this for a couple weeks on how to word it better and maybe spend our last 10 minutes just kind of bantering about whether these ideas are even ideas we like before we worry about how we want to word it. Maybe deal with the concepts first. It's sort of up to you guys. We only have 10 minutes left. I'm not so sure we will perfect wording in 10 minutes. I'd like to hear the committee's opinion on it. What I think is the change here is the substantive change. There's obviously some wording change with that weird do pass recommendation. I would hope all of us agree that's really weird, archaic wording. I suppose what is the major change here is prohibiting minority reports for the credentials committee. And I'd love to hear what people have to say about that, because it's somewhat of a separate issue. Mr. Bracco.
I have no problem with the idea, and I think that y'all were onto something when you had the thought of, I think it was both yourself and Mr. Latham, have it be 2 separate, like ABC. Each platform plank by the platform committee, each affiliate delegation by the credentials committee. I think that's a good idea. I'm not moving anything right now, but I think that's a good idea.
And I have a thought too, Mr. Molman.
Yes. Is there any difference between a minority report
Oh,
and motion made from the floor? Because I guess I'm just trying to think through, the only scenario would be if there was like a significant then someone could move to adopt the entire minority report rather than doing it, because I believe the rules are delegation by delegation under Roberts. Is that correct?
Yes. And yes,
That would be the substantive change then, right? Would be that instead of moving to adopt the alternative, the minority report, you'd have to do state by state. But wouldn't that be, and this does bring up another question, what if every single state was different? Like,
What do you-
because isn't it the whole thing, like you don't get to vote if you're the group that's in contentions or something crazy like that?
the job of that's true, but that's a challenge from the floor.
T.
And the minority report opens that up to coming through the committee. And to my thought on this is that the credentials committee is not an adjudicatory committee. They need to look at the bylaws of who the recognized affiliate is and credential. They're not there to decide bylaws disputes between the delegates. The LNC is the one that recognizes an affiliate or doesn't recognize an affiliate, and the aggrieved affiliates have judicial committee appeal rights. So the credentials committee has started to turn into an adjudicatory body of affiliate disputes, and that's not their job. Their job is to credential following the recognized, even if some people think it's the wrong affiliate, the recognized affiliates bylaws. And then the delegates, if they think the LNC got it wrong, the JC got it wrong, they can go and move to strike and substitute an entire delegation from the floor. Leave those kinds of disputes to the delegates and not add another adjudicatory body, that being the credentials committee, into the mix here.
Yeah, and just since you brought it up, is that clarified? So like LNC recognition leader for that to clarify?
You're breaking up really badly, Ken.
Of course I am. All right, I'll withhold. It's fine. Thank you.
Maybe try again. It was clear that last section.
Yeah, try again, Ken, because I think you're asking an important question, because I think I know what you're asking, but I'm not entirely sure.
Do we have a proposal that's coming up about the whole who the LNC recognizes and all that stuff? Because you brought it up, rationale, and I agree with that. I just want to make sure we clarify that, because that's been a whole bone of contention forever, I guess. Every time there's a dispute between parties and all that, like, do we have a proposal coming, since you mentioned that issue of who the LNC recognizes? Do we have a proposal to clarify how that's going to get resolved, these whole party splits and all that? I know it's not really germane, but you brought up the
It is somewhat
LNC
germane.
recognized.
Mr. Roulette has a proposal. He had said in his submission that this might not be the ideal one, but it at least gets us talking about it. I know there was a proposal last term that had been workshopped a bit. I anticipate that this committee, I don't know if they'll pass one, but they'll at least consider one. But let's pretend that there is none, or that one won't pass. The precedent, it's not binding, but the precedent right now by the latest judicial committee decision is that the LNC is required in about 15 places in its bylaws to determine at least who the key leadership of an affiliate is, such as the chair, or in the absence of the chair, the vice chair. That is in fact the precedent right now in the party until overturned. I do think our bylaws should be clarified in some way, but right now that is what's going what's going on. That it's the LNC who recognizes affiliates. If an affiliate thinks they've been constructively disaffiliated, which has been recognized as a cause of action in the party since
Oh,
2010, they can appeal to the judicial committee.
Okay.
Now, that was answering your point of information. My debate point, I'm starting to look at this for just clarification of language, that perhaps it needs to be ABC, but we just do ABC by committee rather than by subject matter. So A would be, for instance, each platform plank must be approved separately by the committee, by the platform committee. 4 or more members of the platform committee may join together to issue a minority report regarding any plank reported to the floor of the convention. Number B, 2 or more members of the bylaws and rules committee may join together to issue a minority, whatever. And then C, each delegation submitted by an affiliate must be approved separately by the credentials committee. No minority reports are permitted for the credentials committee. So do ABC dealing with platform committee, bylaws committee, and credentials committee, rather than doing it by subject matter of how they pass it and minority reports, if that made any kind of sense. I see Mr. Latham had his hand raised. We're coming
That was a
up.
thumbs up.
I meant a thumbs up. I meant your thumb raised. I do see we have a guest. I'd like to hear from Dr. Moulton first, though, and then if there's no objection, we'll hear from Mr. Jacobs. But Dr. Moulton.
I can wait. I can wait until the meeting adjourns.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moulton.
Just real briefly, I think the point and the utility of minority reports is to present the delegates with some expertise, with some people who have looked hard at a topic and maybe come up with a different opinion than other members of the committee. I don't think that expertise is a bad thing from the credentials committee. My experience going to conventions the past over a decade is we had the Oregon group that the wrong delegation was seated 3 times in a row. And the wrong delegation was seated because it became a popularity contest among delegates who did not have much information. It was about who could pamphlet the delegates better, which is not the best way to decide these things. I think that there's benefit to having the delegates being given somewhat of an expert opinion by people on a committee. So I would tend to favor allowing minority reports for the credentials committee.
Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I just have a question. You have different thresholds for how many members can do a minority report, right? 4 for the platform committee.
Yes.
2 for, can you explain why you chose different thresholds for those?
I did not. Those were the numbers that were already in the bylaws, but I could tell you the reason why they're already that way in the bylaws. Platform committee is 20 members. So 4 members of the platform committee is, I'm not a math person. What is that?
We're talking 20%. Okay, I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah. And both the credentials committee and the bylaws committee are 10 members. So it's half. You got 4 for 1, which is a committee that's double the size, and 2 for 1 that's half the size. That's why that has been that way for a very long time. And I'm assuming that's the rationale for it. I'd like to respond to Dr. Moulton. At least so far, the credentials committee, as long as they, how do I word this? I believe in expertise. people in the credentials committee might have expertise on how to put an HVAC system in my home. I don't want to hear from them on that because that's not what they're there to do. And they're also not there to judge between affiliate disputes. I agree with you that the Oregon situation was a situation where it was a popularity contest, but that, in fact, that particular situation, at least for my limited involvement, wasn't necessarily a credentials committee issue, but it was a voting from the floor issue. And you're always going to have that. Every proposal on the floor, credentials, bylaws, platform, is often dependent upon who whips enough delegates to get there and who does better pamphleteering. So I don't think that's a unique problem with the credentials committee. And I don't think the credentials committee should be offering their quote unquote expertise as to who our affiliate is. That's not their job. They need to follow the rules and bylaws of who the recognized affiliate is. Excuse you, Mr. Roulette.
I didn't even know my microphone was.
Yeah,
We found the burper from before, I think. And I think, are we at time?
We are. That's what I was going to say.
Holy crap. I'm sorry.
We are at time, and there are two people who wish to speak. So is there a motion to extend time? Did you wish to make a motion to extend time, Mr. Molman or Mr. Bracco?
No, a different motion though.
Well, the only motion that's in order right now, or we're adjourning, is to extend time. Okay, seeing no extension for time, we are adjourned at 10:48 Eastern.
Yep, there we go. Leave and join.
Okay, so I can stop the room now?
I think so.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll see you guys on the list. I'm gonna stick the language as it exists on the list right now, so we can begin workshopping, and I'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.
Feel better, Karen Ann?
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.